hear you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So it's 3 o'clock, and I think we can start our session for today. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ashwati Dilip, the National Lead for Complete Streets program at the Institute for Transportation and Development Policy. And I would like to invite each one of you and welcome each one of you to the India Cycles4Change Workshop 2, Pedaling to the Pilot. It has been 3 weeks since our first workshop, and what an exciting 3 weeks it has been. So before I start about discussing about what we've done in the last 3 weeks, I'd like to just start with a few housekeeping rules for everyone here. Participants and panelists feel free to chat and interact with each other in the chat box throughout the discussion. Type your questions in the question answer box. Our team will shortlist these questions for the Q&A session. And finally, if you'd like a question, you can also upvote it to bring them to our attention. So jumping straight into our conversation for today, we have a poll for you to start with. Venu, can you please launch the poll? So we look forward to hearing the results, Venu, from your end.
Yes, Ashwati, we have around 70, nearing 70% of the votes coming in. We can
sure.
In a couple of seconds as well.
So I'd like to nudge each one of you all to take this poll. It's pretty simple.
So Ashwati, I'm sharing the results on the screen right now.
Thank you. So we have about 88% of all of you who are really excited about this particular challenge. And this would be all the more clear when you see what each one of us, all the cities, have been up to in the last 3 weeks. Can you go to the next slide, please? So firstly, a huge round of congratulations to all the cities that have embarked on this journey of phenomenal engagement and outreach to kickstart the cycling revolution across our country. So what does this revolution actually look like? Next slide. There has been a social media explosion, and cities across the country have been informing their citizens that they've started this cycling ride and would really like their citizens to be an integral part of this journey. And it's not just social media. Next slide. Media articles have actually been printed in multiple languages. Next, posters and banners can be seen in many cities: Agartala, Chandigarh, Jaipur, Nashik, Newtown, Kolkata, and many other cities have been inviting their citizen groups to join hands with them. And as a result, I'm very, very excited to let you know that we have more than 2,000 CSOs, citizen groups, and citizens who have signed up to support their cities through the Support Your Cities tab. The link with the CSO information has also been shared with the cities. And these cities, as you can see on this particular slide, have set up their diverse core committee groups, working groups, and have embraced unique approaches to brand their challenge. So cities like Coimbatore, Gwalior, Indore, Kohima, Bangalore, Surat have all done this. Next, to inspire the citizens to take on cycling and actually build a strong support for this cause, cities like Agra, Bhopal, Faridabad, Nagpur, Prayagraj, and Ranchi have even planned various cycling rallies. Engaging with our citizen groups is a very important component of this particular challenge as we brainstorm and finalize our pilot interventions. Cities have also started planning virtual events, as you had seen in the previous image, Agartala and Surat. Now, right now, as we speak, cities have started taking the next step. They've started looking at actual action on the ground as well. Faridabad, in fact, tested out its first cycling pop-up corridor. Next, Kohima has launched its cycle repair clinics, and Newtown, Kolkata has set up cycling training camps. And finally, we have in the next slide, more than 40 cities that have rolled out their surveys to know the challenges of cycling in their cities. And we have so far reached more than 15,000 survey responses. This is just the information that we've collected in the last week to 10 days. And I'm sure in the upcoming weeks, we'll have a lot more responses that's coming up. So wow, it has been fantastic. It's been such a great recap. And I'd like to thank the Smart Cities Mission, every single city that's a part of this particular conversation. Today, the official champions and the city champions who've all embraced this transformation. And with this celebratory note, let me very quickly take you through the agenda for today. So today we'll start with introductory remarks from Mr. Kunal Kumar, IAS, the Joint Secretary, Smart Cities Mission, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. This will be followed by a panel discussion with officials from the cities of Bengaluru, Surat and Kohima. We look forward to hearing from them about their journey so far, the innovative processes that they've used, what they plan to explore going forward as well. And after this, we'll have a series of presentations. So how can you analyze your survey information effectively? How can you plan the cycling networks through community engagement? These are presentations that would be presented by Shreya Gadepalli, the South Asia Program Lead for ITDP India Programme. And finally, we'll take question answers from all of you, and we'll try to wrap this up within the next 1.5 hours. On this note, I'd like to invite Kunal Kumar sir to share his introductory remarks.
Thank you, Aswati. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible, and we can see you also nice and clear.
Yeah, somehow the Zoom call business, which was shut down in office for some time, has restarted. So it's so much more easier. Otherwise, I used to go to a different location to get these calls because Zoom never worked in office. So good, very good afternoon to everyone. It is a very exciting day. We are just one day away from our Independence Day. So I would like to wish everyone a very happy Independence Day also. And a very important topic to talk on, on this occasion. We know that we probably all of us understand the importance of the subject that we are talking about, and through these interactions that we're having as part of this challenge, we're becoming more and more clear, so that the ideas that are shaping in our minds can actually be taken to ground also. So we are moving from abstract to reality, and these workshops are helping us do that. Imagine, so what is the kind of magnitude of problem that we have in our mind is in our hands is immense. We have at the moment 10 cars per 100 people in the country, as far as my statistics show, whereas a country like United States has more than 100 cars per 100 people. And with the cars numbers that we have, which is even, I think, 1/3 of what China has and many other countries has, we are on the lower side. Yet we see so many cars and all kinds of traffic jams on our roads. And going forward, if this continues to be the trend, if we go the American way, probably the smartest thing to do for smart cities will be to search for a technology to sleep on the roads, because that's what we will be doing, because there's no way we can reach homes after office, or maybe 6 hours of traffic jams will become a normal affair for us. And that's only one part of the story. We all know that this is just not the sustainable way going forward. And that's how every city across the world has started to think. Imagination is the beginning, the starting point. We're talking on the eve of Independence Day. Had our people, had our great leaders, people of that time not imagined what independence would look like, they would never have actually fought for independence, and that would not have led to the independence that we all cherish today. So you need to start thinking first and then converting that thought into reality. If we just thought about independence and we did nothing about it, we would never have become an independent country. So it's not only that we thought about it, we actually took action. There were people who took all kinds of things. There were courageous efforts. There were efforts which, at that point, some people would have thought to be mad, because, it was almost sure that isko baad mein kar lijiyega, please, my wife. It could have actually led to, disastrous consequences for the person, but they did it. So that is leadership, when you actually have to decide and actually go ahead and do it. So that this is the time when the topic is not cycling. The topic is sustainable transport. The topic is sustainable future for us and our children and our generations to come. A brighter future for our country, and not certainly the future that other countries have gone to in the past with their populations they have been able to manage. We will never be able to manage. So, as smart cities, if we don't lead this agenda, if we don't convert our thought that yes, this is not correct into reality by doing things, we will never move forward. And I think that is the specific purpose of these workshops, that we have to start realizing those small things which will make the difference. Now, turning into a cycling city, even a example like an Amsterdam didn't happen overnight. Amsterdam also happened over 3 decades. So let's not get too overawed by the idea that it's not going to happen. It's a very long-term thing. How am I going to do anything? By the way, it was something small which began in 1990, which has converted what has happened now in 2020. So what are those small things you can start to do? And I would request everyone in the group to use this time to actually share more of these small initiatives that you can take up. And it all starts by thinking, if you think that there is a particular place in your city where there are a lot of cyclists and walkers and they need priority on the road, you could keep talking about traffic calming with the traffic police. You will never get it. But if you are a bold administration, you can take your political bosses into confidence and your police with confidence. You can actually overnight put some benches and trees. I'm just saying, most out of the box idea could be put some benches and plant some planters on the road at haphazard locations. And also you will have to go zigzag if you are a car or a motorbike, but if you're a walker or a cyclist, you can go straight away. So that's traffic calming overnight. So these are kinds of things which some of you will have to start to show leadership in, and of course you'll have to build a coalition who understand these things. That is one example. For example, if you have a lot of businesses in your city, you could take a meeting of the businesses and you can actually promote 0% interest loans to people who come by cycle to their office. So maybe for buying cycles, so those businesses can actually offer 0% loans to their employees. They can actually offer some kind of benefits, maybe some additional coupon for their canteens or whatever for people who come on cycles. So there are many initiatives. Some overnight initiatives like Faridabad was sharing some pictures, and some pictures from Varanasi, some other cities, a whole lot of cities. Kohima, in fact, you just mentioned some cities, and in fact, 3 cities are going to make presentations today also. And a lot of civic engagement is happening. So all these bits and pieces are going to count. The point is, if you can think of something and you can build a coalition around it, even if it seems a small thing. Let's say a 4-hour stoppage on Sunday of a particular road to allow only for pedestrians and cycling. The kind of buy-in it will bring in is huge. People will start demanding for it. Why only 4 hours? I need 8 hours of this. Tomorrow they will say only 8 hours. We need 8 days of this in a month. And that's how you build. So that's a tactical thing. In behavioral economics, it's called a foot in the door. So when you get a foot in the door, and then you can actually open the door later. That's how smart people are actually working their way out in life. So that's how you will have to start small and then with a focus to go big. And I'll urge, maybe 2 books I will mention again, and I would request all smart cities CEOs and their teams to get access to these books, and possibly also give your teams also to read it. One is called The Building the Cycling City. This is a book focused on the Dutch cycling revolution. It's named Building the Cycling City. The second book is, of course, Street Fight, which is Janet Sadiq Khan. She was a Metropolitan Transport Commissioner in New York. So I think these 2 books fundamentally, and the third book I think is called Walkability by Jeff Spex. These are 3 phenomenal books which give you immense tactical inputs into how this has been done across the world. And I am a strong believer that the person who lives in Amsterdam or a person who lives in New York or maybe in Japan is no different from what we are. We are all the same people. So they are not smarter than us. It's just that in the given context, certain decisions are taken which work out in a certain way. In a certain context, certain decisions have to be taken in a different way, which will work out in the same way. But we need to understand that, fundamentally, there are certain things which are smarter than others to do, and those are the smart things that we should be doing. And definitely now it has to become, and that's why this challenge, we fully understand that in 3 months you can't change the world, but in 3 months you can do so many tactical initiatives that those can start to change the thought, and the thought changes the world, and that's where we are headed. And I'm sure the acceptance of these things is also going ahead, becoming better going forward. I don't i don't think 4 years back, when I was a municipal commissioner in 2015, nobody talked about cycling. We never used to talk about cycling. We always used to talk about new flyovers, and every budget in the municipal corporation will have extensive debates on new flyovers and new road widening. The most fashionable thing to do in a city is road widening. It's almost like having sugar-free cookies. Some of us have this grand thought of losing weight by having sugar-free cookies. We seldom realize that we eat more of sugar-free cookies because we think it is sugar-free, and at the net result is we end up gaining more weight than losing weight, because it's not only the sugar in the cookie which matters to weight loss, it's many other things. Similar thing happens on road widening. You keep widening the road and the number of cars keep increasing. It's almost like an invitation for more cars. 6 months down the line, if a flyover is getting a traffic jam, or a widened road is also getting a traffic jam. And by the way, our roads in some cities are much wider than the roads in London's and New York's of the world. So that is a never-ending thing. And it's just like there's actually a research in Harvard which says that the size of the plate actually leads to obesity. If the plate is bigger, then people eat more, and therefore they become obese. So one of the things they did in their schools was to reduce the size of the plate. So that's the size of the plate analogy to the roads also. And therefore we have to come over these fascinations that we have and move towards sustainable transport, move towards cycling, move towards things which will be beneficial in the long run and not in the short run, and take the tough decisions, take it tactfully. We know that tough decision is a big one, but we can go smaller, and then we'll get a bigger one. So my best wishes to this workshop. In fact, very, very happy that to see the enthusiasm of the cities, and I wish that all culminates into real action on ground, and we see a lot of these small initiatives taking shape, so that at the end of the challenge, it's not that 11 cities which selected get important. That's important. That's of course important, because 11 cities will lead this revolution in the country, I would say. But the others are also equally important. Every person who's getting affected by this is equally important. So let's all make it a grand movement. So I once again wish you all a very happy Independence Day, and let's get independent of the pollution and the traffic jams and everything by all these beautiful initiatives that we think about and are trying to do. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your inspiring thoughts. And like the way you said, so I think many of our cities are changing the thoughts in the minds of their citizens, and soon we will change the world. And on that note, we would like, we'd like to invite our panelists to have a discussion. And it is my pleasure to introduce our esteemed panelists. Miss Hepshiba Rani, ma'am, she's the IS, Managing Director from Bangalore Smart City Limited. Mr. Rajesh J. Pandya, Deputy Municipal Commissioner, Surat Municipal Corporation, and Atoba Long Kumar, Technology Officer, Kohima Smart City Development Limited. So like the way Kunal Kumar sir was saying, it's not just thinking will not do, and we really need to take action. And these cities have in fact been at the forefront of taking that foot in the door. And let's actually have a conversation here with what the plans have been in these particular cities. So let me start with Surat. We know that, sir, you've been able to get some fantastic, almost 2,000 survey responses to the perception surveys that you all have rolled out. So could you share, what some of the tools that you've used to ensure that the survey reaches out to its citizens and you've actually been able to gather feedback from them? Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ashwati. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to compliment the progress of all the cities Especially we were thinking that we have a very big lead, but I think all of us are in the sprint and everyone is very much excited and everyone is doing so well. And we are learning from each other's experience. For the survey, we had taken the survey form that was given to us so that the data of all the cities is compatible and on the same platform. But as you know, the characteristic of every city is different. So to assess our own special needs and features, we had an add-on, we had an annexure. So to have additional details, which we may require for the analysis and a decision of our own city, as well as in the implementation phase also. We have started the survey both online and offline. Offline physical mode is very much advisable because we interact with the people, but looking at the present conditions, we opted more for the online. And it seems in the current situation, people are giving better responses. Earlier, online responses were poor, but at present, we are getting very good responses. We had messages within our groups, within our social groups, within our WhatsApp groups, and in media also, and encouraging people to give their responses. So the online mode till today, we have received about 2,135 responses and we are still counting. So it is, my advice is to target more on online responses. Based on these experience, I'd like to suggest the cities to go on online experiences, use more of the social media, and especially target the groups who are going to be the users of this cyclist. The cyclist associations, they are always ahead. Yeah. But they are, as Kumar sir was saying, let us not say cyclist. Let us target on the transportation and urban transportation citizens.
Yes. Sir.
Yes, the cyclists are the leaders. They'll push our system, but the real users are for daily use trips, which we want to convert from personal mode to cyclist mode.
Sure.
So that should be our point of action and interest.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much for that insight about, of like getting the responses. Next, I'd like to go to Bangalore. Ms. Hepshiba, ma'am, I know that, with respect to the surveys, our survey numbers are slightly low for Bangalore as we speak right now, but we do know that you're using many innovative methods of crowdsourcing cycle routes, etc. So could you speak about some of the innovative ways that you're using to reach out to your citizen groups, and how do you also plan to ensure that more people take your survey up as well? Hepshiba ma'am?
Yes. Hi Ashwati, hi friends, and very good afternoon to Kunal sir and all our officers present here. As we already embarked on this, from last 1 month, several activities have been kicked off at Bengaluru. In consultation with the Directorate of Urban Land Transport, we have had meetings, and we have also launched a survey at the level of the city where all our elected representatives, the local communities, the vulnerable users, be it women or be it children, every person segment is being touched and taken into consideration when we are doing the planning. We call it Plan to Pedal, and we want to take this campaign forward extensively and have maximum input and feedback from the people. And Ashwati, you have to give me 5 minutes time where I will be able to share the short presentation that I made for the day. It is in the PK format that Kunal sir has introduced to us, where 400 seconds I will limit and summarize in that quick time. You may move over to other city. I'll just come back and get the presentation on the screen. Okay?
Sure. So before we go into this particular presentation, I'd also like to speak to Mr. Atoba. So I know that, in Kohima, you all are doing some really innovative ways where you all have kickstarted your cycle repair campaigns, to have merchandise for volunteers, etc. So again, we'd like to hear from you on some of the actual engagement methods that you have taken. And secondly, another question is that like Mr. Rajesh Pandya and ma'am have said, there are a lot of cycling enthusiasts, But how do we reach out to those communities who are not cycling right now, or who are unsure of cycling? And how are we planning, like how is Kohima planning in bringing them on board as well? Could you please share some thoughts on that front?
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much and good afternoon to everyone. So when Kohima first registered for the India Cycles4Change challenge, our entire city was totally locked down. So even our offices were shut down. So we had no other option but to just go for digital promotion. So we immediately contacted our local cycling groups. We brought them in the team, and then we rolled out strategic action plan for Kohima. Now, I feel this step is very important because the needs of a cyclist can be best understood by a cyclist. So we had to bring in the key stakeholders to sort out the entire plan. So I can share the strategic vision plan for Kohima as well. Now our second step was to give us local touch so that we would be able to connect better with the locals. So we had to bring in a very talented graphic designer, and then he came up with the Kohima Cycles for Change logo with a local touch. So we were able to engage with the locals better, and that kind of hyped up the entire process. Our third strategy was to reach out to the people as much as possible. So we had contacted social influencers, local champions, local cyclists who were quite popular in our city. We have quite a lot of few in our state cyclists who have done well in the national levels, in the state levels. So we contacted them and also brought in some social media influencers as well. And then we started to, share the links to them. So they were the, vehicle of distribution of the links and the survey, everything. And then through them, we started selling the dream to our citizens, the dream that, Kohima can be the cycling capital of the country. Let's do this, we can do this. So we started sharing the dream. And, in Kohima, on the ground reality, we don't have a lot of cyclists. Of course we have, but it's not that much as it is in other cities. So we're just starting up, but the response has been, quite overwhelming. And when the team, India Cycles for Change, shared the database from their backend, we were quite shocked to see, like more than 600 citizens, civil society organizations, volunteers, they had registered for the challenge. They came forward to, help out. So using the database, we segregated volunteers separately, we segregated cyclists separately, we segregated civil society organizations separately, and then we have WhatsApp groups for each of those groups of citizens. So it's quite diverse. And then I feel that giving importance to citizens is quite important. So our team, we individually contacted to all of those persons who had registered, and then we had asked them to share the survey, share their point of view. So everybody was on board, and right now we are taking up a lot of initiatives. In our strategic action plan, we have 10 initiatives and like around 6 pilot projects. So now Kohima has opened up. So today we had our first, groundwork. That was the free bike repair clinic for all the cyclists. It has just been concluded, and tomorrow we'll have the freedom ride. So cyclists have come forward, registered, and tomorrow we'll be flagging off our, Kohima Cycles for Change campaign. So those are some of the strategies which we had, come up with, and the remaining pilot interventions will be taken up, in the coming weeks. So thank you so much for this time.
Sure. That's fantastic. And I'd really like to take a minute to sort of just, round up on the things that we've discussed so far. So it was really nice to hear that the volunteering database that you've received, like you've been able to, like, you've really leveraged on that front. And the way you have segregated the data into the different users who could support you was very useful as well. And giving each citizen importance by calling them personally and speaking to them and nudging them to be the champions of your change was fantastic to hear as well. So on that route, if I could go back to Rajesh sir, sir, I know that you also have a very diverse team that's supporting you in your work. You have a virtual public meeting that's planned upcoming as well. So could you share how this sort of a diverse team has supported you in going forward with this particular challenge, and what some of your plans going ahead are as well?
Yes, sir. Ashwati.
Yes.
Actually, when we started thinking about the project, first instance that came to our mind is everyone will be thinking of this common lines. So let us think out of box. Let us not follow the group or the herd, but find our own way. And for that, we need someone who thinks out of the box. Like I am an engineer, I'll always think like an engineer. And as a planner, I'll always think like a planner. So we want to have someone who thinks like a user, what he wants. So we have a diverse group. We have formed a core team, working group. And to have a proper implementation, we are coming out of the box. Like we have no formal team. No one is the leader. No one is not, SMC is not the leader. We are a part of the team. So we have people from all walks of life and different professions and interests, but with the sole motive of promoting cycling in the city, and that too about not only as recreational and health activity, no, but as a major transportation force. You will, if you look to our title of the public meeting we had, it says cycling is not just transportation, it's transformation. We want to transform the way people think and way the people travel. Me and my executive engineer represent Surat Municipal Corporation. From academic and research field, we have research transport engineers from SCNIT, National Institute of Technology and Engineering College. We have practicing engineer and architects to help us design, who work in the field. We have cyclist associations and activists who are the major driving force with us. And we have the full support of the chambers of commerce and industries for financial and other supports. And the active support of social media, public engagement and communication support has been great. We have all experts from all these fields in our core committee. So whenever some thing has done, we have the expert for that. Another thing is we have got smaller groups for different activities. So I don't do everything. There are groups for social media. There are groups for events. There are groups for research. There are groups for project report. So they work on our own. And when they have something, they come to us. Let me tell you, we don't have to schedule one day. Daily, we have a meeting at 12 noon. Every day, 12 noon, there is a common link. We all log in. And whenever someone has out of this working group, any core group wants some discussion, they come and they say, now what we'll do with the event, we have this stalemate, this situation, we advise that. So daily, at least for 15 minutes, even on Independence, even on Raksha Bandhan we meet. So we have an average discussion of 40 to 1 hour daily. That is the thing. And as sir was saying, we have to move small, but we have to move steady. We have to move regularly. Momentum is going to be the main force. Once give a push, then relax. No, give momentum, move slowly, slowly, slowly. Slow and steady does it. We have to keep the momentum. So we meet daily, and every week, small or big, we have some event. After the launch of the cycling event, we had a brainstorming session on the 16th of July, for which helped us to identify and activate the persons who are interested in the project. Recently, on 11th of August, we had a virtual public meeting, which was headed by our mayor, our Chamber of Commerce and others. So there is a title, cycling is not transportation, it is transportation. And this citizen engagement participant, it helps us to bring awareness among the citizens about cycling, and more particularly about the challenge and what this project is. Now, we have received a very overwhelming response, and this has boosted our morale. Now we know, yes, still people want it. And some data are there which we can share later also. But for this, so this is the way we have activated our work, especially the core team, and how we are engaging the people with us.
Sure, sir. And I think some of these ideas have, again, it's been so good. So sometimes you think about just the team, but how do you actually work with the team is also important. If you have such a large team, the fact that you spoke about how you have a core team, but you have working groups for each of these smaller pieces, and how you've delegated this work to them, given them the freedom to work, yet when they have any challenges, they can always come back to you these regular meetings, and how you very clearly spoke about it's important to have consistent, self-motivated, directed effort, so that you're directed towards this cycling challenge and you're consistently meeting them, and there's a lot of motivation, and which is self-motivated because all the team members who are a part of it have also bought in to this particular challenge, and that's very nice to know. And how you looked at having a diverse team as well, and also about the way you spoke about you having this virtual meeting, and where someone like the mayor who's really looked upon was coming there and giving the vision, saying that I also have the same vision of promoting cycling, and I'm with each one of you all, is also a great thing to get the city rolling. Now, from here, Hepshiba ma'am, can we come to you?
Yes, Ashwati. I'm just sharing the document.
Sure.
Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It is visible. It's slightly small, but it's definitely visible. You can go ahead, ma'am.
I'm using the mobile. I think that must be the reason.
It's fine, ma'am. You can continue. You can continue.
Yeah, for the Cycles for Change discussion, following the discussion that actually started off on the 10th of July, when we had this initiation that was done by Kunal sir, where he said we have to seize the opportunity and start looking at sustainable transport and sustainable future. So in that context, we thought we will take inputs from all users and have this plan to pedal. And by October, the deadlines that we have already identified, we freeze and participate in this challenge very actively. That's been the direction we started. And I'm using the PDF mode. The PPT would have been auto, but because of technical issues, I thought I'll switch over to PDF. Zoom was not allowing me to. And to start off with, the context of Bangalore, you can see there is a culture of cycling, I can say. I was looking into books which are of Bangalore city representation of the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. There is one popular book by name Bangalore Swinging in the 1970s. In the book, there were 12 very significant catchy images where there are people on cycle, and the representation is very clear that it is part of Bengaluru's culture, because Bangalore has the advantage of environment and also a very informed civic society, which is open to sustainable ideas, I can say. Contextualizing non-motorized transport and the kind of visible public mobility architecture that we need to create in our city spaces, which is part of the smart cities mission agenda, showcase it in the area-based development projects, let the replication happen outside the APD. Drawing from all these ideas, we have incorporated within our smart cities action plan only of late project where we have pop-up cycle lanes. There is this Kaban Park in the heart of the city in front of the Vidhan Sauda, where we actually identified 16 kilometers for cycling, and we are actually going to create the dedicated cycle corridor, and it will be a no vehicle zone. So heart of the city next to the state secretariat, we want to create this sustainable means of transport and give our citizens the best of the experiences. This is the proposed pop-up cycle lane that we are planning. We already started off work on the ground. These are images of how we want to transform this place to be. Then we are also using all our users and people who actually matter to do this kind of planning. We can actually engage actively the users and also the departments which are closely in the planning for this kind of road and mobility infrastructure. The major one I can see along with our collaborator, the participant Directorate of Urban Land Transport, we have the traffic police and the local municipal corporation, that is BBMP. So these two organizations we have already started the stakeholder engagement, and whatever design of roads, junctions that we are doing from now on will certainly have these concepts embedded. And we in fact relooked into the smart roads plans, and last month we have already effected the necessary changes to incorporate a cycle friendly design. We also have the local community where actually the DULT has started from October 2013, a cycle day event. So drawing upon this 7 years of time and planning and the kind of mobilization that has gone into celebrating, observing cycle day at Bengaluru, uh, rather than a cycle event once in a year or once in a month, or like we all know, June 3rd is the International Bicycle Day. We want to have a very close network of our community to ensure it becomes a daily activity. In fact, amongst the survey questions, one of the major question is why we cycle. And when we see the responses, there are people who cycle for recreation. Those users who cycle for recreation are actually using it once in a week. But there are people who cycle to education places or shopping who use more frequently. So we need to cater this kind of user behavior and mobilize the local community to ensure the change actually happens from within. Like I told about the cycle day, this is an initiative of the Directorate of Urban Land Transport, who are co-partners in this mission. And one of the questions that you are also trying to emphasize is how we are trying to engage other partners, other stakeholders. We have this bicycle mayor of Bengaluru, who is also very active. You can see this is a Twitter post from today from the bicycle mayor's handle, which reads, "This Independence Day, pedal for freedom from fuel." So a very conscious, very informed society, civic society at Bangalore is our major strength, and we are building on it big way.
Sure,
And we are also having all handles, the Twitter handle and the Google Forms, whatever tech tools are there, we are deploying all of them to do the survey and involve the communities.
sure.
One more thing is to ensure the safety aspect, because when we looked at the questions, there was one question: what makes you feel unsafe when you are on road to cycle? There is this fear of being hit by vehicle. So we are factoring in all these thoughts and ideas and requirements of public and trying to include all of it. And this particular thing I have tried to show here because we are also looking from a women user point of view. I can say DULT and Smart City Bengaluru have the representation of the other half or the better half. So we really want to cater to them in real sense. And this is one picture I picked from Twitter a couple of days back. Road labor needs no introduction. He has actually posted this picture, which caught my attention, where he has written these three two-word phrases: wear a mask, keep moving, stay safe. A man who is old is pedaling, wearing the mask, and this is the best way to actually propagate physical distancing. So I think there is a lesson for all of us, young or old. We pick up and seize this opportunity that COVID has given us, and adapt to the new behavioral change in our urban landscape. The cycling
Sure.
survey is on our Twitter handle. I request all the participants to have a look and give us feedback and participate. If you were at any time in Bengaluru, your feedback is very important and valued. This is a post by our Honorable MP Bengaluru, Mr. PC Mohan, who has actually tweeted the importance of participating in this survey to make Bengaluru bicycle friendly. This is a message for all that we own up this change, and we deliver the way we visualize and want it to happen. We want to create a very active network of the non-motorized transport, collaborating with everybody. The technical support of Smart Cities mission is beyond doubt and comparison. You can also see this beautiful image of Vidhan Sauda. This is also from the Bangalore Swinging in the 1970s book, where you can see there is a cycle in front of the Vidhan Sauda. Let's try to innovate, and we are looking forward to ideas from all our colleagues and friends from Smart Cities Mission. We want to learn, unlearn, and relearn from all of you, and take this opportunity to actually plan to pedal and keep cycling for future.
That's
Thank you
fantastic.
so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of these pieces. And I'll just very quickly, we're running a little bit out of time, but very, very quickly, I think the discussion with all the three cities have been fantastic. They've put right in the center that it's very important for us to get our citizens and diverse teams together to deliver on this particular challenge. They've been looking at women, children, as well as elderly, as they're taking all their citizens together. And inspired by what all of the cities have been doing, and these three cities as well, I think Kunal Kumar sir has a special announcement to make. Sir, you seem very, very excited with the change that the cities are making. We'd really love to hear more from you, sir.
No, it is inspiring, and the kind of messaging that is coming across, especially Surat and Kohima and Bangalore, they have spoken, but I'm sure everyone has a story to share. These are inspiring, and this shows that we have taken on the mantle, and I'm pretty sure that this will show results on ground. Very important thing that Mr. Rajesh Pandya said, that it has to have momentum. It has to be small things every day and not a big thing and then step back and take a rest. There's no rest here. You have to keep working. A small announcement, but a very kind of significant one. We have been talking about cycling, but we've really not talked about walkability. And I think cycling and walkability go hand in hand. They are, part of the same bucket of non-motorized transport and the overall bucket of sustainable transport. So it's like, we talked about the khichdi, but we talked about only dal and we left out the rice. So I think it's time we talk about both together. And I think the walkers on the road must be feeling jealous of the smart cities where they're taking care of the cyclists so much and we're getting left out. So I think we will include both going forward. For us, it's very important to build momentum towards non-motorized transport, and walking is a very key element of that. So walking and cycling together will be our focus going forward. And I think the Streets for People challenge, which will again come up in September, is a step in that direction. But hold on, don't get worried, because I think some of us will start to get worried, feeling there's one challenge going on and another challenge and all that. We will merge them together. We will take you along. And all of us have to understand these challenges are not to challenge us. It's essentially to challenge us in a way to take our own thinking and our own growth towards understanding these issues and because we are in positions which matter for the city to be able to take it forward to the society. So we will work with you. There will be a team which will work with you, and we will combine the cycling and the streets effort both, so that we are able to maximize, synergize, and amplify the impact that we can have. So this is just a small announcement at the moment. We will come out with details later. You don't need to worry about it. We will take you along. This will be something which will be announced in September second week. Over to you, Aswati.
Thank you so much, sir. And yeah, like you mentioned, there's no cycling without walking, and both walking and cycling will go together. And we'll see how we add more pieces and make sure that our cities become walking and cycling friendly going forward. And now, next, to jump straight into our engaging presentations, because I know that many cities have been continuously reaching out to us saying, what pilots do we do? How do we actually win this particular challenge? What is the proposal that needs to be created? So in order to demystify all of those questions that we have in our mind, I'd like to introduce our speaker for these presentations, Shreya Gadipalli, South Asia Program Lead, ITDP. Shreya, over to you, Shreya, to share the presentations with our cities.
Thanks a lot, Ashwati. And it's great to know about all the fantastic work that cities have been doing. And Mr. Kunal Kumar, thank you for being such a strong support at the national level for making this happen. So I'll go into two specific presentations. The first one, many of you have done fantastic progress on the surveys. And what we've tried to do is, how can we exactly use the information from the surveys that you've done into the planning process itself? So we've taken the case of one of the cities. I don't want to name which city it is, but we are using the data from one of the cities that has sent the data. Let me just start sharing my screen so that you can actually see it. Can you all see it? Great. So how do we use the data, the survey data? So the idea is that you could use the survey data in 3 different ways. One is in planning and designing actually the cycling network, which will make cycling safe and fun. It could also be used in various kinds of community interventions, and we'll see what it means. And finally, it's also very valuable data that you can use in communicating these ideas, especially to build support for the cycling interventions that you're planning to do. Because do remember that it's great to see all the momentum, but there will be opposition. And when there is opposition, you do need to be prepared of how to leverage data and information and stories to build support and maintain the momentum for cycling. So here's the data. So, take the example, one of the cities that we had gotten the data from, and this is the split that we saw, that there was more men who had answered the survey than women. So I would urge you to think about ways in which you could actually get more female respondents to also take the survey, so that you would have a more fair understanding of what the situation is. Similarly, what we found was that the majority of answers, actually 88% of the answers or the respondents, were in the bracket of 19 to 50 years. As in, of course, this bracket is a large bracket, but there is an inordinate number of people who are in this bracket right now who have responded, which means that we do not have enough data about people who are older than 50 or younger than 19. So again, reach out to respondents from other age groups, find out how you could get that in the city, right? So the goal is that you use this data to also inform how do you go ahead to get more of the right kind of data, which you can inform your planning process. Next, look at what kind of information that the data tells you. Amongst men, a large number, like over 90% of people actually, or men who responded, said that they know cycling fairly well. And a few of them, 4%, said not confident. But amongst women, the number of women who did not know how to cycle or were not confident was fairly large. Nearly 40% of women said they do not know either cycling or are not very confident about it, which means that the potential interventions need to focus on how do you start training programs for women, and how do you organize safe spaces for women to start learning and be confident to cycle. So think about how the survey information can be used for informing your own planning process for the interventions that you do. Another example, we asked, like you asked your citizens to respond as to whether they own cycles or not, and what kind of purposes they use the cycles for. And in this particular case, what we found was that men have a higher access to cycle than women do. So we need to think about what's stopping women from having access to cycles. What can we do about it? How can we increase the number of men as well as women who have access to cycles? Second, we looked at the trip purpose, and we found, at least in this particular case, that the respondents were inordinately in the space of recreation and exercise, and not so much under the work or education trips, which is what daily trips tend to be. And therefore, we need to think about how do you reach out to respondents who actually cycle to work or school. So some of the examples which were given by Mr. Rajesh Pandya in Surat about how are they trying to be more inclusive about it and bringing all sections of the society along in being part of the planning process itself, rather than it being only a small set of people who are driving the planning process. Then we looked at the barriers to cycling, and this was one of the most important questions that you had asked in your survey. And in this particular case, these were the barriers which were identified by those who took the survey. And the survey information was also split amongst women and men. And what we found was, especially while the answers were quite similar amongst men and women were especially more concerned about being hit by speeding vehicles. They were very concerned about potholes and open drains. And they were also concerned about obstructions such as parked vehicles. And last but not the least, there was also a question of cycle parking, which was equally important for both men and women. Like about 40% of them said that was their concern. Now, this is key data that can inform the kind of actions that you can take. So if these are the 4 concerns, the potential interventions is you need to look at how do you make segregated cycle tracks so that there is a segregation between fast and slow moving vehicles. How do you traffic calm when segregation is not possible, to again make sure that it's safe to cycle. Look at how can you improve the riding surface, what's stopping, like what are the potholes, what are the open drains, how can you make sure that they are addressed. And last, look at also how secure cycle parking can be a key component of the work that you do. Maybe this is an essential piece of work because citizens are concerned about secure parking for their cycles. The final piece, which is a really useful piece, especially from a communication perspective. So when we asked how often do you cycle, what we found was that only 6% of the respondents who had given the answer said that they cycle daily, while remaining people were only occasional users, such as maybe a few times a week or maybe only over the weekends. But 62% of them said they rarely or never cycle. But the same set of people said, when asked if there was better infrastructure, would you cycle? And the answers are there for you to see, right? 88% of them said yes, a resounding yes. And 11% of them said maybe, that maybe if you actually do it, we will do it, which means that nearly 100% of people are saying if cycling was safe and fun, we will cycle. And this is very, very useful information for you to make the case, whether it is to your political leaders or people who are detractors for your interventions, to build support. And the second piece is also look at a targeted campaign for women to take up cycling, because that's another piece which you could take up. I would also like to point out, like some cities made some modification to the survey, and that's very welcome. But sometimes those modifications don't exactly work. For example, one of the questions was, how often do you cycle? It was daily. Just give me a second. It was daily, few days a week, only weekends, rarely. And in this particular city's case, they also added the option of all of the above. Now, all of the above doesn't actually work because rarely and daily cannot go together, right? So do consider modifying, but with care, so that you don't have odd conditions of this kind, where you say all of the above for both rarely and daily. So that's just a point to take care of, if you are modifying your surveys. So that's about the survey. So I'd like to stop here and see if any one of you have any questions about the whole idea of surveys and how it could be used in your city. One of the things that we'll also do is to share these templates of how you can create the graphs with your own data as you start getting more data. And it's great that we've gotten all these cities which have already done surveys. We have close to about 15,000 samples of survey. And what we really urge is that every city should look at getting a few thousand samples of survey to make it a realistic and representative sample for informing your decisions. Any questions at this point? And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. Maybe I'll stop sharing the presentation just momentarily to say if you have any questions about, please put them in the chat box or the question box so we know what questions you might have. Looks like there are no questions, but like I said earlier, we will share templates for you to use the survey data and for analysis so that you can use it for your own planning purposes. Let me go to the next section, which is what do you do with it now? How do you start planning? So how do you create a successful cycling city? And like we discussed last time, for a city to be a successful cycling city, you need to adopt the whole idea of test, learn from it, and then scale the idea. So test designs through pilot interventions, learn from the pilot interventions with the citizens, and finally scale up to transform the entire city. But what are these pilots, right? Like many of you did, make sure that you have a diverse team that includes citizens and CSOs in planning process, because as you will see, a lot of the work is actually in a collaborative manner of how you identify your pilots and how you implement the pilots. And we've already seen that many cities like Agartala, Ahmedabad, Chennai, Faridabad, Kota, Nashik, Pune, Tumkuru, and many others have already conducted these citizen consultations. So it's not just Surat and Bangalore and Kohima, but many, many others who've taken very solid action. And it's great that you've already taken that action. So the essentials, as we learned last time in the workshop, that there were 3 parts to how to make a successful cycling network. The first of one is to look at cycling safe corridors. So these are large arterials which connect different parts of the city to get across the city itself. The second piece of it is looking at cycling safe neighborhoods. These are slower streets within your neighborhood. How do you get to places like your schools, like your kids going to schools every day, or things like you going for daily errands, to nearby markets, or going to religious places like churches or temples or mosque or whatever that place might be where you would go to, and maybe gardens or parks, but they are within your sort of home ground, so to speak, wherever you live. And lastly, look at safe intersections, because these are critical. Many cyclists are very, very afraid of, or many non-cyclists are very afraid of dealing with intersections because they become very difficult conflict points for them. So how do we start addressing each of these? First one, planning an effective intervention. A corridor, so you look at both a corridor and a neighborhood. So what we are asking you to look at in your pilot is that you should consider at least one corridor in your city which connects 2 different parts of the city, and look at least one neighborhood and make sure that entire neighborhood becomes cycling safe. And we recommend that the corridor and the neighborhood are connected to each other. It is possible that you might take them in different parts of the city. We are not saying you cannot, but we recommend that they be at the same part. And we're suggesting that a corridor should be at least 5 kilometers in length, because that's a logical distance of connecting different parts of the city in most cities. They could be longer, but we suggest that you make it no smaller than 5 kilometers in length. And lastly, when you're looking at a neighborhood, look at an area of something like 3 to 5 square kilometers as being an area which you're trying to make cycling safe. So first we get into the corridor. What are corridors? These are essentially arterial streets, and they provide citywide connectivity to to citizens, right? So you're going from up the southern part of the city to maybe the center of the city, or from maybe the eastern part of the city to the northern industrial estate, which might be there in the city, and so on and so forth. These are often wide streets which carry high volume of traffic, including a lot of cyclists, and the speeds are high, and therefore what you would need to do is to make sure that there's segregation also on these streets. So the second part, like I said, was neighborhood streets. Now these are quite distinct. These are streets which provide connectivity to everyday destinations like schools, shops, bus stops, nearby bus stops, or parks, etc. Relatively narrow streets with low traffic volumes, but they can still be unsafe if you do not take necessary action. And a mix of different age groups and genders use these streets. Cycling now, and they can still be quite challenging for at least some cyclists, especially children or women or the elderly. So how do we make them safe? First, let's get into the corridor. How do we get to creating a safe cycling corridor? Let's look at the city. We're calling this city Malgudi, and Malgudi is about, it has about 1 million residents, about 10 lakh residents. It's a city about 50 square kilometers in size. What you first do is start mapping the data. Many of you actually have either existing or proposed projects of creating cycle tracks. You might have created a cycle track in the past, or you have plans for it under your smart cities plans, or otherwise to create a cycling track, map it on your map to see how does it look like in the overall network in the city. Do remember to map accident-prone zones, because safety is a very, very big issue and a very big concern. Like you saw in the survey earlier, most people are afraid of fast-moving traffic, and you want to make sure that cycling is safe for everyone. Third, make sure that you're also getting information from your citizens. Identify where there might be corridors which you have not identified already, but where there are large cyclist volumes, and you could crowdsource this information like Bengaluru is doing and some of the other cities are doing. Get that information, again, map it on a single map to see what does your overall network start looking like. Now, you don't need to create all of this right now, right? All that you want to do is to map to see what are the corridors which are possible in the city. Now, once you have all of these, look at a corridor which is easy to implement, a segregated cycle track. Now, I understand many cities may not actually have the ability to create segregated cycle tracks everywhere in the city, but I'm sure that there is at least 1 or 2 corridors where you could create a segregated cycle track in the city. Second, make sure that you have strong citizen support who will back you, and that the project is going to be high visibility. So I would strongly urge you to not take up some road like the outer ring road, where the visibility might be fairly low, but instead take up something where the visibility is much higher. Third, look at a corridor which potentially caters to various demographics, including children, women, elderly, and others. And in this case, we're saying that maybe that corridor is this one in the southeastern part of the city, right? So choose which corridor it might be in the city that you would like to implement. Now comes the most important part. We are asking you to do what we call a handlebar survey. We are asking you to go on a cycle ride so a cycle ride that's together, the city officials, the traffic police, citizens, together going on a cycle ride at different times of the day as well, to find out what it is like to cycle on different sections of this corridor. How do you negotiate junctions? How difficult are junctions to cross? Which junctions are more difficult to cross than others? How do you cross streets if, for example, you're riding on one side of the road and you want to get to a shop or some destination which is on the other side of the road? Is it easy or difficult to cross the street? How is it to cycle at night? How difficult is it to cycle at night in the same location? So some places might be very easy to cycle in daytime, but not so easy at nighttime. So we will give you next week a detailed checklist for this audit, but get on your bicycles and do a handlebar survey. And just a second, sorry. And this is like what a handlebar survey report looks like. We will also give you some examples of what these surveys look like. Like I said, cycle as a team. It should be city officials, traffic police, citizens, cycling groups, everybody together who's going out. You're doing actually an audit on the ground on your bicycle to find out what it is like. Then the last step is come back, start mapping all this information that you found out together, and start looking at what potential solutions might you have for each of the concerns that you have. And now this applies as much to a cycle track that you might have created in the past, but you're trying to find out why is it that that cycle track that you created did not work. So you might find solutions to how to fix the problems and make your older cycling track functional, which was not previously functional. Or it might be a new corridor that you're planning to implement, or you've identified that corridor as one that's important in the city. Start looking at how to make sure that it actually works. Also look at interesting ideas like, what you'd want to do in this case is that you would want to map things like this. Like, you're checking whether certain sections are well shaded or not. If it's well shaded, it's very nice for cyclists. Also identify which sections might have poor road surfaces, which need to be fixed. Are there junctions which are very large and hard to cross? Are there sections where there is significant parking encroachment? What are you going to do about it? And also look at, is it difficult? Is it dark and dead at night, which makes it very difficult to ride, especially for women and children? So identify these various kinds of issues which might be there. And then use tools like StreetMix. StreetMix is a very interesting tool where you can drag and drop various modules to see solutions for right-of-way for different rights-of-way. So for example, what you have might be a 24-meter road. So what can you do on a 24-meter road? Do you have a one-way, a two-way cycle track on one side of the street? Do you have cycle tracks on both sides of the street? You can start playing with various potential ideas to see what the solution might look like. We'll again send you a link to StreetMix. And if you have some questions, please reach out to us as to how you can use StreetMix easily. But it's a very, very easy tool for anybody to use. Now, what are safe cycle corridors? We will not get into the design details in this session because the primary focus for you over the next 3 weeks is to identify your corridors and identify the problems, the barriers to cycling on the key pilot corridor that you're choosing to implement as part of the challenge. But solutions are essentially you're looking at how do you create the cycling track? What all elements do you need to look at to make sure that the cycle track is safe, is workable? Along with the cycle track, you need to make sure that your footpath is also functional, because if your footpath is not functional, your cycle track will become the footpath. Whatever you create in the name of a cycle track will become the footpath. Make sure that you are looking at intersections. Like if you look at this intersection, it's like a football ground. It's very hard for anybody to cross an intersection like this. So start looking at what kind of solutions that you can have on this intersection where you're making the intersection compact. You're looking at solutions like bike boxes, which allow bicycles to come right up to the front, to be in front of motor vehicle traffic so that they could cross the intersection ahead of the motor vehicle traffic. We'll again get into the design details in the next session. This is just to give you a sneak peek of what kind of design solutions you can have. That's part one, which was creating a safe cycling corridor. Now let's get into creating a safe cycling neighborhood, a cycling safe neighborhood. Now, there might be multiple neighborhoods that you'd like to pick up. You might have something in the north or the east or the west or the south or the center of the city. Again, the selection criteria is look for areas where you have strong citizen support and high visibility. Look at an area which has the potential to cater to wide demographic, and preferably a neighborhood which connects to your corridor also. So by that count, in this case, we are saying that maybe the southwestern, southeastern or southern neighborhood is the right neighborhood to choose on basis that criteria, the 3 criteria that we've just now suggested. Now, once you have this area, you've marked a broad circle around it, start identifying specifically the boundaries of your intervention area. So your intervention area now starts looking like this dark gray trapezium that you have, right? In this, start identifying key neighborhood level destinations. They might be bus or rail stops, they might be gardens or parks, things like schools, because a lot of kids live within close vicinity of their schools, so maybe they can cycle to schools. And make sure, and safe routes to school can be a very, very strong tool for you to adopt. And finally, look at local markets that you might go to quite frequently, and can people shift from using a motorized mode like their car or two-wheeler and shift instead to a cycle to reach those destinations. Now, once you've identified what your overall area is on the base map, that's what you've drawn out, right? All these areas. Conduct a handlebar survey again. So like I mentioned about a handlebar survey in the case of a corridor, you could do a handlebar survey in a neighborhood as well. You could choose multiple different paths to go between different origins and destinations. Like if you see on the picture on the right side, you see in the same area, there are multiple routes in the same neighborhood. You might be going from A to B, you might be going from your home to a market in the evening, or kids might be going to school in the morning and then midday coming back from school to home. Choose these different paths and go out on a cycle ride to identify again what I call pain points. Where is it that you face significant challenges in actually riding to your destination? Once you've done that, and again, we will give you a whole cycling experience audit checklist, which you can use for the process. You would now start mapping things like if there are additional destinations which you had not originally mapped on the map, or you might find that there are certain intersections which make it unsafe to cross to the other side of the street, or it's hard to cross to the other side of the street. Or you might find that there are blind spots which become safety hazards in certain parts of the neighborhood. Or you might find that there was a local street which has now become a thoroughfare because it provides direct access for motor vehicles to cross through the neighborhood, making the neighborhood more difficult for cycling. So after you've mapped all of these, you can have various solutions. So, you finally, after you've mapped, you start looking at what kind of solutions that you would have. What are these solutions? For example, if you look at this picture, you see that there is this road right there. If you can see my cursor, that can be a high-speed road within a neighborhood. So can you block off that with a series of bollards so that you do not allow any thoroughfare for motorized traffic, but your cyclists could still go through? So it still remains safe for cyclists, but difficult or impossible for motor vehicles to go through. So they will have to necessarily reroute or take a detour to go to their destination. Another idea of rerouting motor traffic, and this is something that Barcelona has done really well, is the idea of a super block. So in the past, which you see on the left side, you would have motor vehicle traffic crisscrossing the city wherever they would like to, motor traffic. But instead, in the new means, what they've done is that they've actually blocked off the possibility of motor vehicle traffic to go through. Instead, they would still allow motor vehicles to access the area, but only in smaller loops, but not cutting across the neighborhood, which means that the neighborhood now becomes safe for cycling, but difficult for motor vehicles to pass through. Not stopping access to properties, but stopping through movement for motor vehicles. So these are some interesting ideas that you could probably consider. And instead of having motor vehicle traffic move at something like 50 kilometers per hour, instead you're reducing and making them safer at more like 10 kilometers per hour, so that cycles and motor vehicles can coexist in these areas. So then you could think about even slowing the traffic with ideas like a chicane, which is these alternating barriers in the city, on the street, so that motor vehicles necessarily have to slow down. They cannot speed on a street like this. So what does it look like on a street? You would start putting these alternate barriers so that you start making it a serpentine route for motor vehicles and make it difficult for them to speed, which means that it's safe for your children and elderly and everyone to cycle within the neighborhood. And finally, maybe there are the peripheral roads of the neighborhood where you could even consider things like cycle tracks, maybe one-sided cycle tracks, where you still provide access to cyclists to complete the whole network. So these are some ideas of what you could do. The idea is it's a 4-step process. First, map the data. Second, select the pilot corridor and neighborhood in your city. Third, conduct handlebar surveys. Go out on the street on your bicycle to find out where the barriers are. And lastly, come back, map them, and identify solutions through a collaborative planning process. Make sure that you're including everybody, the traffic police, the CSOs, the citizens, especially the vulnerable groups at every step of the process, so that this becomes a collaborative process to finding solutions for whatever you have. After this, you can think about other desirables as well. Things like cycle rentals, training programs, cycle repair clinics, bicycle parking. But make sure that the core of your cycling safe plan is creating safe streets for cyclists to ride, whether they are corridors or neighborhoods. Always remember, the idea is test it out, learn from it, and then scale, so that eventually you would have the whole city becoming a cycling safe city. So with that, I'll stop. We'll have the next session on building the momentum, but I'd like to ask if you have any questions for this. If you have any feedback for the session itself. Venu, would you like to run the poll to check how it has been?
Sure. Just a second. So the poll is launched and we have responses coming in.
If you have any feedback on this presentation, and we'd like to get your feedback so that we can improve on it in the future. And you could also send us emails or send it on the WhatsApp to tell us what you think about the guidance that you're getting from us.
So Shreya, there have been a few questions, and if I could just raise them as well. So one of the questions from Agartala was about what sort of cycle interventions would you suggest for narrow streets?
Sure. So like I had mentioned earlier, on narrow streets, what you want to make sure is that you don't probably have space to create a dedicated cycle track. But instead, what you want is to reduce the speeds on narrow streets. And also, like I had mentioned earlier, maybe you can cut through traffic, through motor vehicle traffic. You still allow access to properties, but you do not allow fast moving traffic to go through your neighborhoods on narrow streets. Certain sections of it could be blocked off, which could become cycling only. So, and these can be very strategically located barriers can do the job. So you don't need actually a lot of infrastructure, but instead these strategic barriers which can change the whole cycling landscape in a neighborhood.
Secondly, Shreya, another question is a lot about safety. And there are multiple people from across the country who've said that, cyclists don't find it safe on our streets. And are there any particular safety related measures that you would like to highlight as examples as well?
Sure. So, like we know, if there are large streets and there's a significant differential in speed between motor vehicles and cyclists, you do want to have segregation, right? But segregation alone doesn't do the job, right? You need to make sure that the segregation is also continuous so that cyclists can go from their entire origin to destination safely, that the riding surface is of a high quality so that you can actually ride. You should think about also starting to plant maybe things like trees or even temporary coverings to make it a more comfortable ride. And last but not the least, oftentimes we miss the fact that you also need frequent crossings, right? As a cyclist, you don't want to travel 2 kilometers to find a U-turn to go to the opposite side of the street, but instead you would want to have crossing opportunities every 200 meters or so that you can actually reach wherever you want to reach fairly easily. So think about both for pedestrians and for cyclists that you need frequent crossing opportunities.
Sure, Shreya. Thank you so much for that. Another question, as we discussed the surveys, one of the questions is that do you think we should have a survey closing date? What do you think would be the optimum time that we should run the survey?
I would say that maybe we should extend it till the end of August. That would be a good time, but start thinking about innovative ways in which you could actually read various sections of the society. Not limited to only those who might be upwardly mobile and who have access to online, tools, but how can we make sure that we can get other groups also involved? Maybe look at local self-help groups who can facilitate getting data from poorer sections of the society, poorer parts of the city, so that and maybe there might be volunteers who are willing to fill the survey for others on their mobile phone. So think about ways and means in which you could get a right sample, a right representative sample, which is not skewed. So like I had shown earlier in the survey data, sometimes that data can be very skewed. You might get a lot of male respondents, but not so many female respondents. You might get a lot of young respondents, but not older respondents, and so on and so forth. And what we'd like is that you want to get a fair sample of respondents to make your decisions.
Sure, Shreya. Thank you so much again. Now, last question for today. In the presentations, you've mentioned about conducting the handlebar survey, and some of our cities are under corona as well. So we would want the cities to follow all city protocols. But what are your suggestions under those circumstances? If you could add some light.
As in, of course, you want to make sure that everybody is safe. By no means do you want to expose anybody to coronavirus. So maintain all the precautions that you need to maintain. Masks are extremely important to use. So make sure that you're wearing masks and wearing masks properly when you are interacting with each other. Especially, what we've found more like a lot of scientific data now shows that coronavirus is primarily airborne, which means that when you speak, the virus can potentially come out of your mouth as small droplets, which is what is going to affect you. So especially when you're close to somebody and you're talking, make sure that your mask is you're wearing your mask properly, and the other person is also wearing the mask properly. But at the same time, I'd also like to highlight or point to the fact that if you're riding very fast on your bicycle and you're exerting quite a lot, you need a good amount of air intake. So be sure that you also are taking care of that when you're riding your bicycle, that you get ventilation and you're not exerting yourself. And when your heart rate is very high and you want the oxygen to come inside, that your mask is stopping that from happening. So it's a balance. Make sure that you're safe. Make sure that your partners are safe as you do these surveys.
Sure, Shreya. Thank you so much for all of those. And we'd like to wrap this session right now. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Shreya?
No. So, we'd like to, I hope that the presentation was useful for cities. If you have any questions, any suggestions, please feel free to let us know so that we could give you appropriate guidance. We'd be happy if you can also share what you are doing to identify your corridors and the kinds of surveys that you're doing so that we could learn from each other.
Thank you, Shreya. So I think we're almost towards the end of our workshop, and we'd like to sort of extend it by about 5 to 10 minutes to very quickly take you through another presentation as well. Can we start the presentation? So as we know that multiple cities, all of you all have started building momentum for this particular change by having various campaigns in each of your cities. And right now, to further keep this momentum going ahead, we would like you all to take it to the next level with another online and an offline campaign as well. Next slide. So first, the campaign that we're looking at is collecting cycling stories from citizens. So tomorrow with the Independence Day, we really encourage all cities to launch the cycling stories from their citizens campaign. And the main aim of this is to look at how the cycle has been more than just a vehicle, to celebrate empowerment that cycle has given to many, especially the women, people from the economically weaker section, to show how cycling has positively impacted our people and to garner support for the Cycles for Change challenge. Next, as we collect these citizen stories, while we want these stories to actually become, something that the citizens take on and own, initially we will have to post a few stories from our end. So we'd really like you all to collect 1 to 2 stories from city influencers. We spoke to many cities. The 3 cities whom we spoke today early, they said about how the different kinds of influencers that they're reaching out to. So we encourage all of you all to reach out to a few influencers. Share the poster on social media, asking citizens to submit their posters, their stories as well. We've shared a full how-to guide with templates as well. We would really appreciate if you all can launch the campaign tomorrow and share the stories from the India Cycles for Change Facebook page as well. Next. So while we're launching this particular campaign tomorrow, we would really like the campaign to run a span of over 2 weeks, and we would encourage each of you all to share stories every day. At least 1 story per day would be a good idea to keep the momentum going. Just the way, like Rajesh sir said, that small things but regularly to keep the momentum going would be a great way. Collect stories from vulnerable groups, especially women, children, elderly, because it's very important to put them out there and give them all the support that we can as well. And every time you put a story on, one of the great techniques to get people to share their stories would be to tag some of the most enthusiastic groups in your city, people whom you know, etc., and ask them to tag other people as well. So we would be sharing example posts that you can use, and it's been fantastic to see that some cities have already started working on this as well. Next slide. So as we have the online campaign, since many of the cities have started planning rallies, etc., here we're also encouraging cities to close streets on the ground to build support. As we know, there are some cities where the cases of coronavirus are still high and you will have some restrictions. So we would leave it to each one of you to make the decision of what needs to be, whether it is safe to do this or not. But at the same time, many cities have, even at the heights of COVID, have closed streets during the weekends and suggested that people only go out by walking and cycling. So this is to also send the point back home that cycling and walking are very safe modes and they allow physical distancing. It is to create safer streets and build confidence in the community to come back and start using these modes. And also, as we've gone over the last few weeks, like most of us have been sitting at home, it has been impacting our mental health as well. And to use streets as a recreational space to help improve mental health during this particular time period as well. Next. So in order to think about, so how should we go about doing this? So as Shreya had already mentioned in the previous slides, as you're looking at corridors and at neighborhoods, it would be great for you to identify a network in the corridor that you plan to implement your pilot as well. Ensure that it's a collaborative process. Get all the different stakeholders like traffic police, officials, as well as citizen champions on board. Release an official circular to inform everybody that this would be happening on whichever on the dates that you plan to host it, as well as the time periods that you have to host it as well. An important requirement would be barricades and signages, because that is important for you to let the city citizens know about the closure of these streets itself. Next. As I mentioned, during this entire process, please do involve the community, particularly keep in mind women, children, disabled groups in your campaign to make it as inclusive as possible, cycling enthusiasts and CSOs to ensure that it becomes really successful, and also all different local authorities who need to play a very important role. For example, like I said, the traffic police officials to ensure safety during this particular campaign as well. Next. So this is a great fun and a safe way to use our streets. And it's also a fantastic way to tell citizens that, until now, you've not had the confidence. So your survey results have shown that many people might own cycles, but they don't have the confidence to cycle outside. So this is a great way to now start getting not just the recreational cyclists or the everyday cyclists who have been using this without choice, but also to get people who know cycling but they might not have the confidence to cycle, or as you're looking at having training programs for those who do not know cycling, so for cycling, for example, women groups, this would be a great way to test all of those out. So we would really encourage cities where it is safe to go ahead and plan this offline campaign and also launch the online campaign as well. Next. So wrapping this particular piece, in order to build the momentum, the key points that we'd like you to remember is that, one, let's look at celebrating cycling stories, celebrating your memories of cycling from your childhood, etc., and nudging citizens to think about that as well. We discussed earlier today, as we start changing the thoughts, then we would be able to change those thoughts into actual action on the ground. And this is exactly what we want to capitalize with the Cycling Stories campaign. And secondly, the closed streets as well. Many cities have been going ahead and doing rallies. So now, those cities that are safe and confident, we'd really nudge you all to close your streets and encourage more people to come out safely, wearing their masks, maintaining physical distancing, but at the same time to explore cycling and walking in their neighborhoods as well. So this brings us to the closure of this particular part of the presentation. Next slide. So I would really like we'll just put a poll, and we'd really like to know what your thoughts are on this piece of the presentation as well. I know that most of you all would really like the technical pieces, but at the same time, these pieces are also equally important in building support for our challenge. So here is the poll for you. Please take the time to fill this poll. And during that time, I would also like to very quickly remind you that until workshop 3, the focus items that you would want to work on are, one, like the cities have mentioned already, and their successes is the fact that they do have very diverse teams. So we would encourage you all to build diverse teams with the citizens and CSOs. Many citizens and CSOs have expressed their interest in working with you. All those links are shared with you. So please feel free to go look at those links and reach out to those people. The cities today, such as Kohima, Surat and Bangalore, have really shared how they have utilized this great force. So we encourage each one of you all to do the same as well. Finalize the pilot sites for corridors and neighborhoods, conduct handlebar surveys, map it, identify challenges as well as solutions, and build the momentum through campaigns. So we will be sharing with you how-to guides for each of these. And if you have any particular questions, please feel free to reach out to us as well. You can reach out to us on our WhatsApp groups as well as email. And you could also call a few of us if you think that is essential. And the C4C team, like I said, we would share the presentation, the video of the workshop too, the handlebar survey templates for outreach, and all other additional resources as well. So I'm just going to take a couple of minutes for question answer sessions. We would very quickly look to wrap up. At the same time, if you all have any questions, please put your questions in the Q&A box as well. So just very quickly, some of the questions that we got early on. So one question that we have received is that there are broad indicators that are stated in the brief, but what would be the exact evaluation criteria? And also looking at big city versus small city, hilly areas versus plain areas, etc. So on our brief, we do clearly say that right now we've looked at the pilot intervention, how successfully you would implement your pilot intervention, the participatory process that you're going to have during this entire process, what your scale-up plan is, as well as the innovative methods for funding the scale-up plan as some of the measures. But definitely by the end of August, we would be sharing more details about what the clear criteria for evaluation would be. Shreya, do you have any other points to add to this question?
Yeah, as in, that's the answer, Ashwati. And I'd just say that there would be an independent evaluation committee. It will not be just ITDP, which is doing the evaluations. An expert committee which will look at all the proposals that are put forward by the cities. And of course, there would be a fair representation of cities of different sizes and different characteristics. So, there would be a few cities which are large cities, a few which are smaller, mid-sized cities, a few which are hill cities, because each of these have different characteristics. And we'd like to have great examples of all these kinds, which can become models for other cities to be inspired by. And the whole idea is that this challenge is not a one-time event. It's not about 11 cities getting selected. We'd like all Indian cities to become great cycling cities. So we will continue to make that push so that everybody learns and eventually everybody wins.
Thank you, Shreya. And as I think Shreya already touched this point in the previous pieces as well. We've received questions about how whether projects that have been tendered in the past or which have not been implemented but have just been tendered could be considered as a pilot for this particular challenge, or whether we could take up an old project that has not been successful on the ground. So an important piece for us that have been stressed continuously is the whole concept of test, learn, and scale. So if a project is entirely designed and if you've just tendered it out, which means that there's no option for you to learn or even collaborate with your citizens to understand whether what their pain points are, etc., while they've been for this particular project, then that particular project cannot be considered. But at the same time, if you think that there's an opportunity for you to test this particular design, make changes before and collaborate with your citizens for this entire process, that is something that we can consider. And also, like the way, if you have an old project that has not worked, if you use this, so to give you an example, there was an official who had spoken to us about a project which was old, where they had a cycle track which has a public transport route which has a lot of ridership, but somehow the cycling last mile connectivity had not picked up. And so the whole approach was about reaching out to communities to understand what was the problem with the existing cycle route, and also to reach out to public transport users to understand what will encourage them to use cycling as a last mile connectivity, and looking at having the neighborhood networks around this particular corridor. So if you can leverage your ongoing or your previous projects to look at how you can make something that did not work workable through the whole process of test, learn, and scale, that is what would be considered feasible. They consider a pilot in this intervention. And if there's no scope for you to test or learn, and if you're just going to implement something in this very next month, then that would not be considered. Shreya, could you?
That's right. That's right.
Fine. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
So older projects can be considered, provided you're doing something new to learn, to test and scale, to test and learn in engagement with the community, with the citizens, to make sure that there is an improvement that you're bringing about in the process. So you could also pick up a new project, a new pilot corridor, or a new neighborhood. And especially the whole neighborhood approach is something that Indian cities have not tried so far. And that's why we would like every single city to choose at least one neighborhood to pilot neighborhood level interventions. Now, these need not be cycle tracks. In most cases, they will not be cycle tracks, but they would be more about traffic rerouting, slowing down traffic to make cycling safer, looking at what kind of additional interventions, like maybe cycle parking that is required, safe crossings across arterial streets to make sure that you can go across large arterial roads as well. So think about those elements. I'd again say this particular workshop in the next 3 weeks, we urge cities to identify your pilot corridor and your pilot neighborhood, conduct the handlebar surveys and identify the barriers to safe cycling, and start thinking about potential solutions. We will share the survey formats as well as potential solutions, this presentation itself, as a guide to you. And please feel free, keep asking us questions, and we will get to you whatever resources that you would need so that you can do successfully plan, you can successfully plan your pilot interventions, right? And in the next workshop, we will focus on the specific design solutions for whether it be a neighborhood or a corridor, including things like low-cost solutions. So one of the questions was about low-cost solutions. And the whole goal is low-cost, quick interventions of this challenge. And we will share all those specific details in the next workshop.
Yeah, thank you so much. And as we wrap up, I'd just like to once again highlight that as a pilot intervention, what we're saying is that cities should transform about 1 to 1.5 kilometers of an arterial
5 kilometers of a corridor,
yeah,
and 3 to 5 square kilometers of a neighborhood.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Shreya. Thank you. Yeah. So that, and with that, we'd like to wrap this particular session. And Benu, if you could just launch the poll for the entire workshop and the last presentation as well.
Sure. Actually, the last presentation poll has been wrapped up. I'll share the last one about the whole workshop.
Thank you. So it's been a fantastic ride so far, and as we look forward to more action in the weeks going forward, I appreciate all the cities to take up the work that we've sort of discussed today and put that into action. And before we close, I'd like to thank all the cities who tuned in today for this particular workshop, the official champions as well as the citizen champions who've been keeping all this work going ahead, the smart city team who really supported in ensuring that there's very good conversation with the cities as well, the entire team at ITDP who have worked both in ensuring very seamless coordination with the cities for ensuring that the technical presentations are crisp so that the cities can understand this very easily, as well as to ensure that all of our communications and outreach program is also top-notch so that the cities can run with these programs as well. With all of this, I'd like to say thank you for attending this particular workshop, and we look forward to seeing you for the next workshop.
And I'd like to also thank Mr. Rajesh Pandya and Mr. Atupa and Hepshiba Rani ma'am for having been panelists in this session. And what we'd like is that in every session, we will invite different cities to share their experience in the process. So if you're interested to be in the panel next time around, please let us know.
Thank you.
Thank you
So much.